myself, I am Shanmugh. I am from Vizag, and I will be instructor for your Linux session today. Um, Today, we are going to briefly discuss about the introduction, kicking off with Linux. Um, okay, shall I open the slides and shall I
Yeah,
continue
please,
the
sir.
class?
Yes, sir.
So, uh, is my slide visible to you?
No, you haven't shared. Please share your screen.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot.
Yes, yes.
So now is it visible?
Yes, sir. It's a Word document, I think. Don't you have the PPT type?
Yeah, I opened a PPT.
This is PowerPoint. Okay, it is in portrait view. Okay, okay. Yes, sir. Please continue.
Um, so okay, before starting the class, what do you think about Linux? Just what is Linux?
It is an operating system like Windows and all. Similarly.
Yeah, okay. So I wanna tell you something. Basically, there is a common conception that Linux itself is an operating system, but I just have to say that Linux is just a kernel. Kernel in the sense, it manages your hardware resources, and whatever instructions to give to your machine, it converts into a machine language and then passes it on to the hardware so that it can understand. That's what a kernel is. Um, it's not only used in your Linux operating system. For example, you can take your Android phone and whenever you check in your system about phone, you see a line like a kernel, something like kernel and some 3 point some version.
Yeah, version. Yes, sir.
Android, so even Android uses Linux kernel, and all the smart devices now we are using like smartwatches and stuff. It also uses kernel. Basically, whenever you say Linux as an operating system, there will be a line known as GNU/Linux. That's totally known as an operating system. Um, so basically, the history is in the year 1969 at Bell Laboratories. um Dennis Thompson has developed a language known as B. Just like C language, he developed a language called B. So um, in the later year, Dennis Ritchie, his colleague and friend, renamed the B language and added some modifications, which he called as C language, that we are using now today. So, uh, but basically, what I'm trying to say here is how Unix, right? Unix operating system. So before Linux, there used to be Unix. So I'm trying to explain here the history of Unix so that I can continue on further into Linux and stuff. So he developed C language. Using this C language at Bell Laboratories, um, both Dennis Ritchie and Richard Thompson and a few other programmers developed Unix. This Unix operating system is like a commercial one, which is basically used in mainframe computers. Mainframe machines are nothing but um, each part of an machine. Like suppose you take a monitor, it's so big that it needs a room to fit one part. Uh, Even the processor, it takes an entire room. So these are mainframe computers. In order for them to process some tasks that you assign, we they used to use Unix operating system, which is totally closed source, which is nothing but the program, the code that you used to develop that operating system is not available to the public, so that they can change and modify stuff. So you whenever it comes to Unix, you can't use it in your daily day-to-day PC or laptop and stuff like that, because it needs a high capable uh, like high capable what you call, the RAM processor and all that stuff. um, so uh, wait a minute. Okay, in the year 1973, a man by the name Richard Stallman, he thought about introducing a new operating system which is similar to Unix, but it is free. Not whereas Unix is not free, and it is hard to use, and as well as it only works on higher end machines like mainframe computers and stuff. So this guy started a project called GNU project, GNU. It's a recursive acronym which stands for GNU's not Unix. That's what GNU is all about. So he gathered a bunch of people, and he tried to develop that GNU project, that operating system. So yeah. So by the year 1990, 80% of the project was complete. But they were missing something that was, important for the operating system to translate some machine level language. So at that, in the later year, 1991, a man by the name Linus Torvalds, from the University of Helsinki, this guy uh, wrote a text of code and compiled it into a kernel. This kernel was used by that GNU project people. This totally became as Linux operating system. That's what Linux is. So whenever people talk about the Linux and they say it's operating system, it's just a kernel. Uh, it also came from the name of the founder, Linus Torvalds. So yeah, um, that's what that's how Linux as an operating system is created. And coming to the differences between Unix and Linux, Unix, it is closed source, and Linux is an free and open source, which means you can download the code, the programming code available on the internet, and you can change your own modifications and release it under GPL license, which means free license. So um, Unix as a it's a paid one, and Linux is free. There are a lot of versions of both Unix and Linux. Well, in Windows we have flavors like 7, 8.1, 10, Windows XP and stuff like that. Unix also has some flavors which are released by different companies, like the HP, IBM, AT&T, all these different companies. They released their own Unix versions. And coming to Linux, there are almost around 500 different Linux distributions. We call them here as distributions or distros. The most common ones used in the industry are Red Hat operating system or its free variant CentOS, or Fedora or Ubuntu, and so on. The first four are the most commonly used ones. And so in the next session, we will be discussing about the architecture of Linux, and what are parts, what is a kernel, and how kernel works, and then how to install an Linux operating system, and how to use it for daily purpose.